Hello, welcome to Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz, and today's show we're going to be talking about walking past the talent every day. Do you realize that you walk past talent every single day? It's all around you. And our systems in place, our unconscious biases, and just our general busyness and being involved can prevent us from seeing that talent that's just next to us that we just walked by. At the same time that we complain about talent doesn't exist, perhaps we're not looking in the right place. Perhaps our algorithms and other things that we use are preventing us from seeing it. And most of the time, we don't even realize it. We may be looking for that cultural fit, but that cultural fit may be keeping the actual talent we need to help our business and our organizations. We have different ways of looking at it. So if we get into some of our screening algorithms, they can at times be self-defeating because it's important to think about how those are seen on the other side. We put into our systems ways of keeping people out because let's face it, well, how are these systems designed, especially the ATS and others, they are for exclusion, not inclusion. But when's the last time you looked at what it's excluding? That can be self-defeating. If we never revisit it, it is keeping people away from us. And then we compound it and we say, well, AI will save it. And then we do it even more in spades. But what could be sitting in there? It could be unrealistic job descriptions. We might be wanting senior level expertise at a junior level pay. Are we demanding perfect matches? And that's really the market nowadays. We want to pivot. We want a perfect match. We want you to know 15 different technologies and different ways of doing things. We want you to come in roaring, but we don't train and we don't look for the actual talent we need. And that talent is sitting on the side. There's several ways to look at how we do this. We have a keyword obsession in our society right now. We want you to match every little keyword. But who's putting the keywords in? If you are a hiring manager or you're trying to bring people into your organization, are you the one deciding what those algorithms are looking for? Most of the time, you're not. You're asking somebody else to do it for you. So what happens is we have some really unrealistic expectations that keep the people you actually need. And I've said this before in previous shows. When I hire, I always look for problem solvers. Why problem solvers? Because I figure skills can be taught. But if you aren't somebody who really wants to dig into a problem and solve it and figure out new and inventive ways to find a solution, then perhaps that's not the best fit. Now, I was a director in a insurance company, and what happened is I had several people on it, about 48 people working for me at the time. And I was expanding and I was looking for some new folks. But one of the things that I always did, which I didn't find some of my fellow directors or managers do, is that I would always interview the person first. And I would ask a series of questions on how they solved problems, because that was the talent I was really looking for. Now, after they passed me, I would hand them off to, if it was a technical position, to one of my tech people to see if they knew some of that or some of the other pieces that I was looking for. But I always talked to them first. And if they didn't get past me, then it was over. And I would explain it to them and say, look, this is what I'm looking for. I don't think there's a fit. I didn't want to waste their time. There was no reason to have them spend another hour or two on premises if we weren't going to move forward. And we see that a lot nowadays. It's trying to make those decisions, and we bring them in for 5 different rounds interview, and we have them take tests and all sorts of things. And the really great talent is moving on. They're not going to have patience for that kind of stuff. We need to make the decisions. However, we are tapping into some of our unconscious biases and allowing talent to go right by us. So as I said, we get into these keyword obsessions, we mismatch on buzzwords. Different people of different ages look at buzzwords a different way. Some have a lot of savvy with it, but it's kind of like, think about in school. What does school train you to do? It trains you how to take tests. If you're really good at tests, you excel. If you're not so great at tests, you don't. One of the things I found is I wasn't good at tests, so I tended to be a B student. However, at the end of the day, I understood the concepts better than the A students. Which one would you rather be hiring? Would you want the one on paper that is got straight A's and doing all that kind of stuff? Or would you like somebody who can actually problem solve? Another thing that we look at is the recency experience bias. So built into the ATS system is it weighs the recent experience more heavily than past experience. Now, sometimes that's relevant, sometimes it isn't. But let's say you took off time for caregiving, you had a health issue, you had a sick kid, you might have been caught in a layoff that had nothing to do with your performance. All these things are penalized. Maybe there's a gap. Everybody has gaps. And these gaps tend to happen more and more as you get older. So they could be for those variety of reasons, which are all very legitimate. And at the same time, what are these people doing outside of the workplace? They're solving problems. So if you look at why this can be a problem, does it really show what they're going to do in the future? Are you hiring? Are you bringing people into your organization that are going to solve problems for you? Or are you looking for somebody to do the exact same thing they've been doing all along? So built into this is, so we start doing this kind of feedback with ourselves and within our organizations, and we start reinforcing what those things are. So the biases that we have, whether it's we think the younger worker isn't going to work out, if we think an older worker is not going to stay, all the kind of biases that we tend to collect and retain become self-reinforcing. We build those into our hiring algorithms, and we build them into our times when we are interviewing, if we even bring those things. And as we've seen in previous, and we will in subsequent shows, the age diversity is really a strength. Intergenerational teams are really what are the most powerful and the most innovative. However, because of our built-in biases and this whole feedback loop that we have on them, we don't tie into that. So our teams become pretty much the same. And I don't know about you, but I don't want my team to be this vanilla sameness that is devoid of innovation. And we've set up a system to exclude people who are on the edges, are more inclined to problem solve, look at innovative systems, but may not have that exact cultural fit that you're looking for. Because it's just human nature. We tend to hire people who are like ourselves. So if we really need to look at these feedback loops that we're reinforcing within ourselves, make sure we're not getting into any age diversity difficulties. We're not relying on our conscious and unconscious biases. And we really have to form transparency in our organizations and the way we look for talent. If you're going to use an ATS system, do you audit it? Do you see what it's excluding and what it isn't? I know companies talk about how they have this overwhelming inflow of resumes and stuff, and perhaps that works for them. I find it doesn't. So I had an experience where I needed to bring somebody onto my team. And I didn't want to be overwhelmed by this inundation of paper that we had to sort through. I didn't want to just rely on HR doing it, because while they have a lot of talents, what I found is that they didn't understand the needs of my division, of my group, as well as I did. And I really knew what the kind of people I was looking for and the kind of talent I wanted. It didn't rely just on keywords and particular skills. It relied, as I said before, on problem solving. That's really what mattered to me. So I did something kind of unconventional. I went and I contacted a local job group. And I talked to the person in charge who helps people who are out of work. And I said, this is what I'm looking for. I'd like to interview a few people from your group. I found this great guy. He'd been out of work for a little while. He didn't fit in, the ATS rejected him all over the place. However, he was exactly what I was looking for. He was one of my best hires because he was a problem solver and he was open to new ideas and to learning from other people. And that all combined, yeah, he wasn't exactly what I would have thought of as a cultural fit for our company, but that wasn't important to me. I was tasked with getting a particular job done for the corporation. And for me, that was important. I wanted to do it well, and I wanted our group to excel. And bringing this person into the mix was really helpful because it re-energized my team and brought in an infusion of new ideas where he was open to hearing what they were already doing, but where I had somebody new who looked at it in a new way. But if I hadn't gone outside of the usual system, this wouldn't have worked for me. So what we need to look at is our hiring processes are broken. We have these Byzantine application systems and multiple interviews and take-home assignments. And, that may be 10, 15 hours of unpaid work. We ghost candidates. We do all these things. But I truly believe what we are doing is we are walking past those talents every single day. And you should be aware if you're walking past the talent, you're leaving it behind. So think about how you can look at that a different way. So after a note from our sponsor, we'll come back and talk about some action items that you can use in order to help you not miss that talent and not walk by it every day. Welcome back to Bridging of Ages. If you're just joining us, my name is Dan Mendelevitz, and we'll go over some action items that we can talk about that will help us understand how we can stop walking past the talent every day. Our first action item: revisit your hiring biases. Now, if you're using phrases like, we need someone with fresh ideas, we're looking for digital natives, this position requires a more energetic approach, they have no experience, they're just starting out, they've been in it a very long time, all those kind of things are internal biases that are keeping us away from the talent that we wish to have involvement with. This is an important way to think about it. Now, we had a show just on conscious and unconscious biases, and I encourage you to go look at it, and it expands on this topic. But if you're not revisiting this on a regular basis, and I suggest you take a look at it at least quarterly, you are losing out on a lot of talent. This is especially important for smaller and medium-sized companies because you don't have the resources of these giant companies. However, you have the opportunity to be much more innovative and nimble. And if you look at different ways to look at people and you can visit your conscious and unconscious biases, I think one of the things that you will find is that you are not walking past that talent every day because you have addressed this. And we all know what those are, and we all fall into them, and I have fallen into them myself, but I've learned to be vigilant about it. I'm willing to assess what the conventional thinking is, and at many times reject it. And as I said earlier, this story of this guy I found in this group, in this unemployment group, turned out to be one of my stellar performers because I was willing to look elsewhere and be open to the fact that even somebody who'd been out of work for a while could be an incredible asset and turned out to be a great one for our organization. Action item 2. So what you need to do is really actively examine your current processes. We tend to look for that purple squirrel. The purple squirrel is really that person who meets 100% of the criteria that we've laid down. And if somebody checks every box, that's our purple squirrel. But we keep looking for them. And we keep thinking, oh, maybe the next person will be good. And the next person will be good. And I've been in organizations that have left a position open for 8 months because they said they can't find any talent, but we're not willing to look at their own processes and their own biases that were preventing them from seeing people because they wanted that 100% person. And somebody who was 85% or even 60%, but could solve problems all the time, was excluded, was sent back, was told that they were not going to be the person. And even worse off, most of the time they weren't even told. This has happened to me too when I was looking for work. I would go through I had one where I went through 5 different interviews. Everything went well. And then they disappeared. I never heard from them again. We need to treat people better than that. Because remember, your hiring system is also marketing for your company. People will remember how they were treated. So we need to examine what our processes are, how we bring people in, how we treat them, how we wrap things up, how we make decisions, how we make offers, how we conclude them. Because the real, diamonds in the rough that you really want are not going to sit around and wait for you. That kind of talent doesn't sit still, and they're not going to put up with the nonsense that you may inadvertently be propagating. So look very carefully at what your current processes are and see if they're working for you. That's an action item that I think you will find, after you've re-examined everything, that is going to be really important to you. So that ties in, once you've revisited your biases in the first action item, you really need to look at your current activities and processes and see if they're really working for you. Action item 3. Revise your system towards intergenerational talent. For those of you who've been with me for a while, you understand that I am a big proponent of intergenerational teams. And a lot of that comes from experience. I have found that repeatedly, if I mix my teams with different ages and experiences, they become more innovative. And there's been many studies to prove this. However, a very small percentage of organizations and companies currently look for intergenerational talent. We need to bring in people who are new to the workplace. We need to bring in people who've been in it for decades. And we need people in the middle. Why? As I've talked about before, intergenerational teams are incredibly productive. And why is that? Because now you have people looking at it from different perspectives and different experiences. You can't substitute for experience. We all know that, even though we like to think sometimes that we can. But every level experience is important. And we'll get into this in some later shows, but if you've ever been in a mentoring situation where both sides have not benefited, then in my feeling, that is not a success. So if you really look at your systems, and this goes back to examining your biases in the first action item, and actively looking at your current processes in the second action item, and this will lead to the third one, where you're revising your systems towards intergenerational talent. And that can be key, because it's really important that you think about how you're going to build out and how you're going to go into the future. As Wayne Gretzky used to say, I don't go to where the puck is, I go to where the puck is going to be. That's really relevant in business. We don't know what the future is going to hold, but we need to build towards it. If you're just hiring for the now, you're already behind, because your business is not going to stay in today. It's going to stay into the future to be successful. So you want people who can build it, who can problem solve, and can learn new skills on the job, not bring everything you need. I've been both an employee and a consultant, and a consultant is brought in with a certain expertise. But an employee really needs to be able to grow, and that's important to the organization. And as I said, when I was hiring, I hired for problem solvers, because that is future oriented. If you hire just for skills, if you just take keywords off of a ATS system, you are not looking into the future. So it's really important that you revise your system towards intergenerational talent. So to review our action items, The first one, revisit your hiring biases. Really take a look at what your conscious and unconscious biases. And I do encourage you to look at the earlier show that talks about that. Action item 2, actively examine your current processes. And, don't look to hire purple squirrels because they're not out there. Action item number 3, revise your systems towards intergenerational talent. We have talked about in earlier shows, and we will be talking a lot about it in the future, the strength of intergenerational talent. So the tip of the day today is talent, not keywords. And as we've talked about, it's the talent that's important, not the keywords that you attach to them. Today's show has been walking past the talent every day. I ask if you please subscribe to my YouTube channel. We look forward to you joining us in future shows. Invest in brain power, fuel brilliance.